All right. Today, we are taking a famously provocative argument from the writer H.L. Mencken and putting it right under the microscope. Now, we're not here to debate whether he's right or wrong. Instead, we're going to deconstruct how he built a case so sharp it still cuts today. And it all starts with this line right here. It's just so blunt, isn't it? After all this dense philosophical setup, Mencken just drops this 10-word bombshell. The entire engine of his argument is that contrast between free and safe, and he makes it sound so simple, so obvious. So here's our goal for this explainer. It's not about taking sides. Nope. Think of us as forensic analysts. We're going to dust for fingerprints and dissect the rhetorical tools, the voice, the words, even the punctuation that he uses to make his case so powerful and, for a lot of people, so infuriating. To do this right, let's frame it like a courtroom drama. Imagine it. In this courtroom, H.L. Mencken, he's the star prosecutor, and the defendant, the ideal of liberty itself. And we're in the gallery watching how he puts this case together, piece by piece. So here's the prosecution's opening statement, the central claim. Mencken basically argues that liberty, well, it's a cold, tough, lonely business, something only for a select few. Safety, though, that's warm, it's comforting, it has, and I love this phrase, the smell of the herd. He's saying that for the average person, it's not even a real choice. And here's where he really flips the script. The crucial point is this. Mencken argues that democracy isn't this noble guardian of freedom we all think it is. He says it's actually the most efficient machine ever designed for destroying it. Why? Because the majority, what he calls the mob, will always resent and eventually crush the independent, free-thinking individual. Okay, so let's zoom in on the prosecutor himself for a minute. A huge part of Mencken's strategy isn't just what he says, but the way he says it. His tone? It's a weapon. He puts on this persona, right? He's like a weary old doctor who's seen this exact same disease 1,000 times before. He's not angry about it. He's not surprised. He's just resigned, diagnosing the symptoms with this kind of grim satisfaction, as if, the whole thing was inevitable. And that authority he projects, it makes you feel like you're being let in on some sad but fundamental truth about the world. And he doesn't just hit one note. Oh, no. He takes you on a journey. He starts off with this high-minded philosophy, making the whole thing feel really serious and important. Then his voice just darkens with contempt as he gets into real-world examples. And just when you think you've got him figured out, he hits you with the punchline, this final, almost grotesque comedy that makes his targets look like total fools. It's a devastating 1-2-3 punch. So now let's get our hands dirty and look at the actual evidence, the linguistic fingerprints he leaves all over the crime scene. This is where you can really see the gears of his argument turning. Okay, so first thing he does, he sets the stage to sound incredibly smart. He pulls out these big, heavy words from German philosophy, talking about the will to power and liberty. It makes his argument sound super rigorous, really profound. But then, and this is the brilliant part, he takes all that elevated language and just smashes it into these coarse, everyday images. One minute you're in a philosopher's study, the next you're in a barnyard, or a prison, or a circus. This collision of high and low language, that's his signature move. And you have to see that this collision, it's everything. He's using these grand, dignified words to describe what he sees as the gritty, undignified reality of everyday life. And that gap, that space between the fancy word and the dirty image, that's not just a stylistic trick. That is the argument. And get this, his tactics go all the way down to the punctuation. His sentences have this forensic rhythm. He'll build this long, winding clause that lays out all the evidence, creating tension, and then bam, a short, blunt phrase delivers the verdict like a judge's gavel. And the dash. He wields the dash like a weapon. First, he'll use it to interrupt some big philosophical point and turn it into a sharp political jab. Then, he'll use it to list things out, making his arguments feel as structured and as undeniable as a legal contract. It's a formal, airtight case built right out of syntax. So, if the language is his evidence, then his analogies, well, they're Exhibit A. This is where Mencken stops just describing ideas and starts redefining them in your mind, presenting these figures of speech as if they were cold, hard, damning proof. And here it is, his most devastating piece of evidence.
He argues that the kind of peace the average citizen really wants isn't the peace of a free man, but, and these are his words, the peace of a trustee in a well-managed penitentiary.
Wow. I mean, that analogy is a masterclass. Let's just break it down. First, a trustee is a convict, right? He's already given up his freedom. Second, he gets special privileges because he's obedient, not because he's excellent. Third, the prison is well managed, which means the goal is for things to run smoothly, not for there to be any real justice. In just one phrase, he transforms the idea of a sovereign citizen into a compliant inmate who's happy with his little comforts behind bars. And now, the closing argument. After presenting all this evidence, the tone, the language, the punctuation, the killer analogies, Mencken delivers his final verdict. And it's designed to just completely demolish any romantic ideas you might have left about democratic dignity. Remember that grotesque comedy we talked about? This is it. He takes these incredibly dignified, historic roles, king, pope, generaliso, and just reduces them to what he saw as their sad, pathetic, modern American versions. The argument doesn't end with a bang. It ends with a sneering, farcical laugh. So in the end, the real power of Mencken's case isn't about proving a fact. It's about tearing away all the nice, comforting, romantic language we use to talk about our ideals. And whether you agree with him or not, his rhetoric makes you stare at the machinery of society and ask a really uncomfortable question. What if he's even a little bit right? And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. We've just seen how a master wordsmith can build a case that's almost hypnotically persuasive. But it really makes you wonder, for all of us, how much of what we believe is based on the logic of an argument, and how much is just shaped by the sheer power and artistry of the words used to sell it to us?